Hello, and welcome to the Running Hook Podcast, hosted by Alex Burr, a member of the Running Hook Podcast Network. And welcome to another off-season edition of the Alex and Dylan Basketball Power Hour. We were having this discussion literally seconds before we started recording. But Dylan, isn't it ridiculous that training camp starts next week and the season starts 3 weeks after that?
You know, I never thought after 3 or 4 months or whatever of no basketball that I would want another break. But man, the season just ended. And we had 3 weeks, and then there's free agency and the draft going crazy. And now, in a matter of weeks, the season's starting again. It's I don't know. I don't know about it.
It's definitely a lot to take in all at once. I mean, thankfully, right, I think I'm just far enough removed from it where this will be the first offseason of our lifetimes where we'll get to see the finished product of the offseason. I mean, I guess 2012 or 2011-12, the lockout year. This is going to be the first time since then we see the finished product of the offseason very soon after the offseason is finished. And I, for one, the league is just going to it already looks so much different from like we said 2 weeks ago when we recorded on November 11th. We said the league was going to look so much different 2 weeks from now. And guess what? We were right. And I mean, there's no more logical place to start than Hassan Whiteside to the Kings. No, I'm kidding. We'll get to Hassan Whiteside. We have a lot of words for the Kings. But Dylan, I'll let you choose where you want to start. Where do you want to start with this offseason roundup?
Okay, so I have a nice little list compiled here, and I think it ended up in alphabetical order. So the Atlanta Hawks top the list here. And it's a good team to start with because the Atlanta Hawks kind of balled out. I mean, getting Danilo Gallinari and Bogdan Bogdanovic. I mean, who would have thought, this is a team that we've talked about before. Maybe they're going to just, keep that young core. They're going to, try to grow that group together and see what happens. But they're no, we got money to spend. We got Trey Young. We're just going to pair him with some, Gallo, great floor spacer, someone that's going to be a good, good guy to play with a young point guard like Trey. And then Bogdan, who's, probably going to push Kevin Huerter to the bench, which, makes part of me sad, but it's probably for the best. I'm definitely giving them a good grade. And throwing Rondo and Chris Dunn is interesting. Is a word I would use. I don't hate it. And the Chris Dunn is kind of interesting because they lost Bembry. So
right.
He could theoretically play that kind of role. And Bembry was not huge for them, but he was a nice, energy piece, good defensive energy guy off the bench who could even spot start here and there if there's injuries. So I don't hate the Chris Dunn signing. Him and Rondo probably should not share the floor at all, though. But I'm giving the Hawks a pretty good grade, and the John Collins factor though is going to be the thing to watch.
Yeah. So I just have one question about the Hawks offseason. Okay, Dylan, are you ready for this? I think it's a pretty simple question. How many guys in their top 11 guys can actually play defense? I count 3. 4 if you count Rondo in the playoffs. 4. So I count Chris Dunn, Cam Reddish, and Clint Capella. Right? And we know that a good center can make a good regular season defense, right? Or at least at one average, right? We don't know how good Clint Capella is. We haven't seen him, non-Rockets ever, and we haven't seen him in that capacity for a while. B, Cam Reddish is their only reliable wing defender. And C, Chris Dunn. I don't know what you're gonna do with Chris Dunn. He's an offensive zero. So those are your problems, right? Those are your problems. And Cam Reddish, let me get this clear, okay? I think Cam Reddish is an enticing prospect with a lot of potential. He's also 20 years old. He's 20 years old. Okay, DeAndre Hunter, sure. But, I mean, do we really know? Right? Do we really know? No. And you have, like, 4 guys whose best position is the 4. You got 2 guys who could play... I mean, 3 guys who probably are going to want to compete for 5 minutes, right? Because Gallo should probably play some 5, especially in the East. This team, to me, is going to be one of the most fun regular season teams in recent memory. Do you see any way where they win a playoff game?
I'm a positive guy.
Positive guy.
So part of me thinks that they have a shot, but I'm thinking they're probably going to be matched up with the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm just thinking of poor Trey Young having to guard Drew Holiday. And I'm not sure that's the matchup that would happen, but it scares me.
You got to deal with the DJ Augustine. You got to deal with the DJ Augustine game 1 too. You can never.
That's right.
We don't know how Trey Young's going to stop that either.
DJ Augustine has been the sole factor in the Magic being able to go up 1-0 2 years in a row. The sole factor.
He's honestly incredible in game 1s. You got to give him that. But in all seriousness, I think the Hawks are going to be, again, one of the best offensive teams. I mean, they should be scoring I don't think it's a stretch to say that they'll probably hit 120 a game, right, with the firepower they have. Just with Trey Young alone, right? They were average offense. Now you have Gallo, who was the second best player on a 5th seed in the Western Conference. And you have Bogdanovich, who is, good, right? You need more good players. You move Kevin Huerter to the 8th man, right? Reddish and Hunter, I don't know what you're going to do with that situation. That's fascinating because, again, Hunter's best position is probably the 4, right? Collins' best position is probably the 4. Gallo's best position is definitely the 4. So you have a lot of guys competing for a lot of positions. So I think that we could see this team start slow, and they'll probably finish around 500, but 500 in the East is usually good enough for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think at this moment, they're I don't want to say they're a playoff lock, but they have a really good shot. They're a better team than Orlando, that's for sure.
They're a better team than Charlotte.
Washington, I'm not ready to say they're better than Washington yet because I don't know. I just feel something interesting cooking with Washington.
We don't know how John Wall's we haven't seen healthy John Wall in 3 years.
Yeah. So the Wall factor is what's interesting. And I could see Washington being a decent 7th or 8th seed, and I could also see them being the worst team in the East, depending on the track they want to take. Because they could very easily trade Wall, or not, I don't want to say very easily, but they could very easily trade Beal, and they could attempt to trade Wall. So they could, and losing Jan Mahimi, is obviously a tragic loss to their front court depth. And I don't know
proportions.
I don't know if they can recover from that. That may be their nail in the coffin right there. But and they also traded Admiral Schofield. These are just moves that really compound into very troubling outlooks on the future. But
okay, real quick before you move on. I know you were joking there, but anytime you have a player named Admiral, I'd want to keep him. Why the fuck not? His name is Admiral.
And this is what I'm talking about. And if you had Jan Mahimi, how many French guys do you acquire? The French impact on the NBA is very underrated.
It really is.
Coming up in a couple, when we're talking about Charlotte here, another French player that they just let go. What is the NBA doing right now? And I believe Vincent Poirier, is that his name, is also French, and he's traded. I don't know what is happening at the moment. There's obviously some sort of anti-France movement, but that's a whole nother podcast so we can get into.
Damn it.
But anyway, to less important things, I don't know what the hell the Wizards are going to be. But that is not what we were talking about. But, I mean, I could definitely see the Hawks being a playoff team, but I could also see them like – and again, like the John Collins factor is big because I don't see how you don't trade him. It's like you're gonna end up benching someone that shouldn't be benched. Like Cam Reddish is so far away from being a good offensive player, but again, his defensive versatility is good enough where he should probably be playing. And DeAndre Hunter, like just the politics of it being the 4th overall pick last year, you know, he can't fall out of the rotation. So, I mean, where does Collins go? Is he, I mean, you know, you can make him a backup center, but you just drafted a backup center. It's like that, you know, there's really just no place for him. So, and whatever they flip him into could, you know, solidify where they end up, but who knows at this point.
Yeah, because John Collins, to me, like John Collins apparently wants a max from what I've heard. John Collins, no offense, Johnny boy. Can I call you Johnny boy? I don't care if I can or cannot. I'm going to do it anyway. He is not worth the max at all. I mean, he's probably worth double digits, right? He's probably worth like 15, right? But then again, he had a PED suspension last year. I don't think he's played 82 games in any of the 3 years. And if he has, I mean, he might have gotten close one year. I don't have the Basketball Reference pulled up. But back to Cam Reddish real quick, because Cam did not have a good 2019, right? But in 2020, from January till March, this is a 27-game sample size. So it's not particularly small. So he averaged 13 points on 44.5% from the field, 39.7 from three, 83 from the foul line. That's a start. I mean, for 27 games, that's like a quarter of the season. So, and he obviously didn't get to finish the season. I am buying all of the Cam Reddish stock that anyone wants to sell, right? But that being said, the defense situation in Atlanta is putrid. That being said, I can't, even if Washington is fully healthy, I think Wall needs time to figure it out. So I would probably favor Atlanta over Washington. If I was going to rank them, okay, I'd go Atlanta, Washington, Charlotte, Orlando, which is funny. They're all in the Southeastern Division, and then all the shitty teams are in the Central Division. It's because the Bulls suck. Who else sucks in the Central? The Pistons suck and the Cavs suck. And then that's the Knicks. Add the Knicks. Those are your 4 shittiest teams in the conference. So I don't know. Atlanta's definitely, to me, first round and out potential. But I mean, with this group, I feel like you would grow. And plus, let's talk about Trey Young real quick, because I think that this is the most important factor of this. He averaged 30 and 9 last year with Vince Carter playing significant minutes. Okay. I think that there's a potential he scores like a couple less points a game and averages more assists, right? He was shooting a lot because he needed to shoot a lot. I think in this system, I think that there's a chance that Trey could thrive.
Yeah, and having Clint Capella is going to be really nice too. Like, because I'm not sure people recognize how good of a passer Trey is yet. Like, I'll just say this: he's a much better passer than he is a shooter.
Right.
That is his best skill is very clearly passing, and he's throwing lobs to John Collins from 30 feet out. Like Clint Capella was playing with James Harden catching lobs. You know, like this is what he does, and Trey Young wasn't really getting great screens either in the last year. So he's probably going to be getting some better pick and roll with Clint Capella, hopefully healthy. So, I mean, that alone is going to open things up. And again, like Clint Capella is going to probably play a similar role that he played in Houston. And they're going to have shooting around the perimeter. Clint Capella is a decent, like, short roll passer. So I'm definitely interested to see what he unlocks, because when he plays with a ball handler like that, and James Harden and Trey Young are on the same level, but they're both elite ball handlers and pick and roll. So I'm definitely interested just starting with those two and building out how that offense operates.
Okay, so before we move on, all right, I'm just going to read to you the 8 guys that played the most games for the Hawks last year, okay? You'll see where I'm going with this once I get to a certain level, right? DeAndre Hunter played the most games last year. He played all the games that they played in it looks like, or pretty close to it. Trey Young was second with 60, tied with Vince Carter. Cam Reddish was 4th. Kevin Huerter was 4th. Bruno Fernando was 6th. Davian Jones was 7th. DeAndre Bembry was 8th. You see where I'm going with this now, right? Is that Trey Young averaged 9.3 assists playing with those guys. Those guys. Imagine how many he's going to get just from Gallo and fucking Capella. Just imagine that level. So I think that we're going to see a boost from him this year, right? And the defense is still going to be bad. Let's not act like it won't be. But man, that offense is going to be so much fun.
Hey, I mean, we've seen plenty of teams that they don't need defense. You know, they're outscoring teams, and you can't rely on that every night like you can a defense most of the time. But hey, if you can put 130 up at the drop of a hat, I mean, there's going to be games where you're not going to need much defense.
That's how, if you look at the Mavericks point differential last year, that's literally what they did. They had an 8-point differential because they had an average defense with the best offense of all time. I don't think the Hawks can have the best offense of all time. I think the Hawks could have a legitimately elite offense. And if they can have even the 20th ranked defense, they're in the playoffs. I don't think there's a doubt about that.
Yeah, and going back to the Washington thing, I was just thinking about how they're probably going to start Rui Hachimura and Thomas Bryant. So that's terrible. I mean,
hey, the Wizards signed Robin Lopez. They're probably.
I like Robin, but I don't know.
Not in 2020.
He's a 2015 player. Yeah.
Agreed with that. But since we spent way too much time in Atlanta, let's move on to the Celtics. They added Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague, and they lost Gordon Hayward, who will bring up with the next team, Brad Wanamaker and Enes Kanter. So on the net, they obviously lost the big guy in Hayward. But how do you like their team compared to what they were last year?
Well, see, it's tough because we've been wanting them to get Tristan Thompson for a year. Quite literally a year. We have been talking about this both privately and on these airwaves. So when I saw that, it really felt like everything came together for the perfect pairing. That he is the exact center that they needed, or he was at least in the group of the exact center they needed with Favors and Ibaka. Any of those three would have been awesome. And they got one, so you can't be mad. And then they signed Jeff Teague. And it's what the fuck, man? I mean, I actually don't know if I'd rather have Jeff Teague over Brad Wanamaker. And I'm actually leaning towards not wanting that.
I'm not a member of the Jeff Teague fan club. Let's make that clear. So you're not talking to an unbiased audience here.
Yeah. I mean, he was great for that Atlanta team, under Bud, but it's over. And I'm not saying Brad Wanamaker was a very useful player. He was not very good. And there's many backup point guards they could have added that I would have been okay, that's an upgrade. But I don't think Jeff Teague's one of them. And as they showed in the playoffs, their depth was a problem.
Yeah.
And losing Hayward and making Jeff Teague a very valuable bench piece for you, I don't know how good I'm going to feel about them when the playoffs come around unless they're making a trade at some point.
Yeah, because they're still going to rely way too much on Semi Ojeleye. Yeah. Their bench is it's putrid. That's the word for it, right? I use that word with Atlanta's defense, but it's putrid. It's really going to be horrible. This would have been a good pickup in 2017, right?
Yeah.
This would have been a good signing in however many years ago, but it's not that year anymore. And Jeff Teague to me, okay, this is no offense to Jeff Teague, right? I've never, I say no offense. I'm going to say something very offensive. I've never liked you as a player. Okay. But I'll admit you were good, right? You were a good player, but you age fast as a point guard, especially one that comes in his early 20s, and he's just not that anymore. And yeah, he could probably score better than Wanamaker, right? Which is probably the logic, right? But why not just stagger? Why not just stagger Kemba and Jason, right? And just sign like some actual wings for your backups instead of having to play Jalen and Jason 40 minutes a game each, which is what they're going to have to do in the playoffs, right? I think in that Toronto series, they were playing like 44 minutes a game, which I mean is fine for like a playoff series, but not for the second round. I don't know if you want that in the second round.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you have Kemba, and like he's gonna get abused on defense. And when Kemba's getting abused on defense, you don't want to be Brad Stevens looking over your bench and be like, oh shit, the only guy I can put in to replace him is Jeff Teague. The same thing is gonna happen. And like, luckily for them, when you have Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, like you have a ton of defensive flexibility. You can switch on the best guard and all that. But you still don't want to have two tiny guards that get killed on pick and rolls. I mean, right. Or on screens. I mean, it's just and again, Stevens is a great coach. Like he's figured these kind of things out before, but I just don't know. I'm just worried about some of these things.
So they got to be banking on rapid improvement from Grant Williams and from Romeo Langford, right? That's what they have to be banking on, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. But I think Romeo has really solid defensive potential. I will say that. He didn't play a lot last year, but he's a really he played good defense when he played. And Grant Williams, you know I love Grant Williams. This is unabashed Grant Williams love over here, but those guys have to step up big next year, because if they don't, they're fucked. To put it bluntly, they're fucked if those two don't step up. And those are the guys they need. I don't think they will.
Yeah, and I love Grant too, but he was terrible offensively this past year. Mm-hmm. And he was a rookie, and he's undersized for the 4, honestly. Like I think he's is he 6'7" or 6'8"?
He's probably undersized for the 3 at this point.
Yeah, he's very small.
He's 6'6".
Okay, yeah. So he's essentially like a smaller Montrezl Harrell. Like and Montrezl Harrell, I mean, he's been able to hold up, but we saw him get abused by Jokic. Like there's just certain matchups that you're going to see in the playoffs where you can't avoid, like the size is too much to overcome. And again, Grant is he's a very smart defender. Like I think that's if I had to describe him in one way, it would be he's a smart defender. Like he's very instinctual. He makes up for his lack of quickness and size by just being smart, being in the right place at the right time, having active hands, all those fundamental things that you like. But again, when you're 6'6", you're going to be put in a box in some way. And if you're also coming up short on the offensive end, it's tough. And maybe he has a nice second year leap, but like you said, that he pretty much has to, which is their problem.
Right. And they're banking on development from guys. Right. And the 2 draft picks they made, they sound like good shooters, but I mean, I should ask Caleb about this. Go check out our draft pod. We received good feedback on that, but you should have asked them about the Celtics guys, but they could have had a guy that fixed one of their problems, Desmond Bane, right? Like what Caleb told me about Desmond Bane, which by the way, got me I love the Grizzlies unabashedly. Had a great offseason, but man, that Desmond Bane draft pick, it sounds like it fixes their only hole, right? And you know what that means? That means, Dylan? It means it would have fixed the same damn hole for the Celtics. Okay? That's what that means, right? If that was a hole for the Grizzlies, right? Having a 3-and-D wing, well, then why the hell didn't Boston draft this guy? Why? They had 3 chances. They had 3 chances, right? And we saw this last year with Brandon Clark, right? A lot of teams got way too he's too old, whatever. I think it's Dylan, the way it sounds like it's going to be the same exact damn thing. It sounds like it's going to be the same thing, with Brandon Clark. And it's like, oh, the Grizzlies got this guy. He was team too old, but he was the 30th pick in the first round. And he's going to be a contributor for them in his first year. And it's like, why not just do that? But it just doesn't make sense. But Thompson for them fills the need of having a big guy. And we talked ad nauseum about Thompson on this podcast. But I mean, just really, I mean, if Thompson, hell, he doesn't even have to defend on the perimeter the same way. Just having that down low defense isn't, I'd say, enough for Boston.
Yeah, I mean, that starting five is awesome. Like, that's one thing you can't overlook. And just because of that starting unit, they're going to have a top 3 record in the East, probably.
I'd say the best starting lineup in the league.
Yeah, that's probably correct. I'd have to do some thinking, but that's probably right. But again, this is a, you know, we're talking about finals contention for them. So
it's not enough.
Yeah. And you know, and the thing is with the trades is like, I don't even know, unless they want to give up a first, like, I don't know where they're getting a trade from because they don't have money to send out anymore. All these guys on the bench are on rookie deals or just small deals. It's like that was one thing that was nice about having Hayward is that's a contract to flip. But now it's like, if you want to make a big trade, you got to get rid of Marcus Smart. And it's like, I don't think, you know, you get rid of Marcus Smart and that just creates another hole.
So that was one thing for me, right? The Celtics apparently didn't want to do the Pacers trade, right? Which was reported about a lot because they didn't want Miles Turner. And the question is why? Because even if you don't want Miles Turner, Miles Turner is 24. He can block shots and he can make threes. Someone is going to want that. What? But Danny Ainge, okay. And this is going to be another rant before we move on to the next team. And surely there's another rant. But Danny Ainge is the most, I almost made the trade GM in the league, right? He's the most like, you should have seen what I almost did, right? I almost traded for Kawhi. I almost traded for Anthony Davis. I almost blah, 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 blah. Shut up and do something. I'm sick of it. Like, just shut up and fucking do something. Oh, you had all these Brooklyn picks. And you got Kyrie. That's great. What about all those other trades you were supposed to make? What about Anthony Davis, right? Just all this shit. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of him because he has his whole little PR team. You know, I'm not going to name names because what a job in this industry, but I'm not going to, like, he has a whole little, like, I'm just not going to name names because, you know, some of these people might be in a position to hire me. I think you're catching my drift here. The Danny Ainge PR network pisses me off. I'm just going to say it.
I mean, we heard about Anthony Davis for like a year and a half. It was like 100% going to happen. And 100% did not happen.
We saw what Kawhi was traded for, right? Eventually. Why not I'd rather have 1 year. I know this is crazy to say, right? Because I love him as a player. I would rather have 1 year Kawhi over Jaylen Brown's future. I'm just going to say it. I'd rather, like, right? We saw what he did in Toronto. Why couldn't he have done that in Boston? Just why? Why couldn't he have done that in Boston? And, you know, you could say whatever, chemistry, Kyrie, whatever, right? But you gotta at least shoot your shot. You saw what he was traded for. Like, he was traded for DeMar DeRozan. Are you telling me you couldn't have upped the offer with Jaylen Brown? I mean, what? It was DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a first-round pick? That's it? You had, like, first-round picks in reserve. It makes me mad. Let's move on to the next team before I continue ranting. We're gonna move on to the Charlotte Hornets. They only did one thing, and they added Gordon Hayward. And what they lost, if they go through with doing this route, is they lost the next 5 years of cap space by stretching Nicholas Batum. So, Dylan, I'm going to give you the floor here because I know you have something to say about this Gordon Hayward signing for Charlotte.
It's just like, why? It's just why. Like, okay, so 2016, you make the playoffs for the first time in 50 years, and you're like, wow, This feels nice. Almost beating the Heat. It felt nice. It felt nice to give the Heat a little run. A Heat team that wasn't even that good, by the way. It really felt good to give Hassan Whiteside a run for his money. So we're going to run it back, baby. We're signing. We got a $40 million bump in cap space. We're giving Marvin Williams the bag. We're giving Cody Zeller the bag. Bismack Biyombo was in there at some point. What? Just why? And bringing Mitch, or is Mitch Kupchak? He's there.
He's the GM.
Is Rich Cho still there?
No, he is not there. He left whenever
he
Kupchak was brought in.
He was the old guy. Okay.
He was the guy that gave those guys all the contracts. But let's real quick. Let's refresh the audience, okay, on what Mitch Kupchak's recent resume was before taking the Charlotte job. There's these two little contracts you might have heard about in Los Angeles that they have had a little bit of trouble shedding. These two guys, one of them is very close to my heart, Luol Deng and Timofey Mozgov. He gave them a combined like $140 million. That was what he did before he got fired in the Genie Bus ouster when she fired Jim and Mitch Kupchak. But continue.
Yes, and that was also in that wonderful summer of 2016 where all the irresponsible rich people in the world were like, hey, let's give this kind of terrible basketball player $10 million more per year than he's worth. So, I mean, you just like, they give all that money to all those guys. You draft Frank Kaminsky at some point. It's like this is just a team that has an incredibly low ceiling. So you get to a point, and these are all 4-year contracts. Nick Batum was signed for like 5 years, $127 million or something crazy like that. It was
crazy.
Like he gets traded from Portland and has a pretty good year. Maybe it was a year and a half. And they're like, okay, here's more money than you ever thought you'd make in your entire career. We're going to give it to you in the next 5 years. So, and instantly he starts falling off right after that. After this great year, that a Nick Batum great season only gets you as a first round exit. They're like, okay, here's a 5-year max pretty much. So thank you. And Nick Batum signed that contract. He fucking ran home. He's like, I hope they don't pull that back because that is a dumb contract. Like Nick Batum knew it was a dumb contract. And they locked themselves into not making the playoffs. I mean, they haven't made the playoffs since then. And, Kemba walks because they don't have any money. And like, I don't know if they wanted to give him the Supermax anyway, whether they had money or not. But like, if they gave Kemba the Supermax or even just a regular max, they were going to be a over the cap team that wasn't going to make the playoffs because they had built themselves such a terrible salary cap sheet. So now they're starting to clear it up. Kemba's gone. They get Terry Rozier on.
Marvin Williams is gone.
Marvin Williams is gone. Like Terry Rozier is not a good player, but like for the point guard market, I mean, he's overpaid. I'm going to say that, but he's not that far overpaid because just the way the point guard market works, like these guys get a lot of money. So, I'm not going to kill them for that. And it was only a 3-year deal. So whatever, but they're starting to shed some money. They're starting to open things up. They got, PJ Washington, Miles Bridges. You got some young guys in there, Devontae Graham. You're really building something maybe next summer or the summer after that. You got some money, you throw it at like a restricted free agent like Bogdan, like not him, but like someone like that could really fit the timeline. And then Mitch Kupchak, you're like, you know what? I want to sell some tickets to fans that can't even fucking come to our games this year. Let's sell some theoretical tickets right now. Let's get Gordon Hayward. I mean, what the fuck? So now they are an over the cap team that is probably not going to make the playoffs. And if they do, they're like a 7th seed at best, first round exit. And, he doesn't fit the timeline at all. Like their older players are Cody Zeller. I don't know if he's going to be there or not, but I mean, it's like, it's just why.
It boggles the mind for sure. I don't think I can add anything that you didn't say. I will say I'd rather have Gordon Hayward on this contract than Kemba Walker on a max, as crazy as it is to say.
Yes.
I mean, Kemba fits a lot better on the Celtics than he ever would on this shitty Hornets team. I second your opinion that Terry Rozier is not very good at basketball. I think when you're a guard and your best asset is your rebounding, that is a major red flag. I honestly just don't know why they didn't trade for Russell Westbrook. It would have just made more sense on literally every front. You would have been a better team. You just everything would have been better, right? Like the team would have been better. You would have given up the Nick Batum contract instead of having to stretch it, which is what it's looked like is going to happen. I mean, best case scenario, they trade the Nick Batum contract with the first round pick next year into OKC's trade exception, right? Which it actually fits perfectly. But still, you shouldn't have backed yourself into a corner like this. Just shouldn't have. You shouldn't have backed yourself into a corner like this. And Charlotte is just a shitty organization that's going to stay shitty for the rest of the time. It's like, when you do shitty moves like this, right? You deserve to stay shitty. That's really the crux of what, I mean, I think you would agree with that. That's basically the crux of what you're saying, right? Is when you make shitty moves, is that you are going to be shitty for the rest of for the next 5 years. For the next 5 years. And LaMelo Ball is probably going to leave after, in the middle of his second contract. I can feel like everyone just knows this, right? Why the hell would he want to play in Charlotte in the first place? Why? If LeBron James was drafted to Charlotte, do you think he's making it to 2010?
No.
In Charlotte, he's not making it to 2010, right? If Dwayne Wade, if whoever, right? All these guys that value loyalty, right? They wouldn't have valued loyalty then to that shitty organization. So I don't mind the swing for the fences, right? In that sense, but this swing for the fences is gonna, at best, you're gonna get a double where it's really close, right? Where you just barely beat the throw. Worst case scenario is you fly out, infield fly roll. So, I mean, I guess there's nothing wrong with a double, but I mean, if you're going for the home run and you end up with a double, that's always disappointing.
I mean, I understand it from the standpoint that no matter what you do, nothing really matters anyway, because, Charlotte's not winning the finals anytime soon. And unless you want to just completely bottom out and be like a bottom 5 team for the next few years to just get, go Sixers mode. I mean, it's like there's a lot of these small market teams that just kind of have to do stuff like that. If you have an opportunity to sign a name player, and Gordon Hayward is over the hill, and I don't know how much of a name he even is anymore, but I mean, I understand it from the point where, your fan base is hanging on by a thread at this point. I mean, there is, I guess, some excitement with LaMelo Ball going there, but I don't know. I mean, you can sell LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward, I guess.
So, okay, real quick, because let's move on to the next team, because I feel like we've exhausted all our Charlotte opinions, as sad as it is to say. I'll say real quick before I move on to the point I want to make. Miles Bridges, it seems like they want to trade him, and I don't know why the hell they would want to do that. It's fucking stupid. But then again, as we've established, everything this team does is fucking stupid. So I guess you can't expect someone who always makes fucking stupid moves to not be fucking stupid. Okay, on to the point I want to make. So everyone's like, oh, Gordon Hayward's only a one-time All-Star. Let's not act like he probably wouldn't have been an All-Star the 2 years that he was, injured and coming back from injury if he was healthy, right? That was a fluke injury. And of course it was going to take him some time to come back from it. I'll bet you he puts up solid numbers in Charlotte, right? I could bet you he probably puts up similar numbers to what he put up in Utah in Charlotte. Now, will it have the same impact? Oh, God, no. And was he on a kind of a loaded Utah team? Yes, he was. That also similarly slotted in Donovan Mitchell and made the playoffs the very next year. But I digress. I just see people sliding Gordon Hayward like that and the ultimate con. No, Gordon Hayward is good. he was a top 25 player in the NBA. Now take that for what it's worth, right? But let's not act like this guy wasn't a good player. Let's not act like he was some scrub who's just screwing teams over because, you know, this white guy can play a little bit of basketball. No, he's good. He's good.
Yeah, I mean, he's still good. And, like, you know, the idea of, like, a rehab Gordon Hayward season with a new team is a little exciting because on that Boston team, I mean, he came back as, like, the fourth option. I mean, he – you know, and he's the guy that can fit in on most teams because he's such a good passer, and he's a pretty good off-ball shooter. But, you know, having the ball in his hands more in Charlotte is going to help restore some of his name recognition in the league, I think.
Yeah, and I agree with that for sure. I mean, Charlotte probably tops out. This is an 82-game season, obviously, but projecting like 82 games, they probably win 35 games, and that's just what Charlotte does. But I thought Charlotte was kind of good this year. I mean, not good, but like bottom of the Eastern Conference, good, right? Like I didn't think they sucked. I thought they were probably better than Washington. Like Washington had the worst defense I'd ever seen. I didn't think Charlotte was that bad. So I don't know. I thought like I think a lot of people, reasonable people would agree that Charlotte was probably better than Washington. But that being said, I don't know why Washington was invited to the bubble. It just didn't ever make sense to me. They weren't. It was a miracle that they won a game. Personally, that being said, let's move on to our next team, the Dallas Mavericks. They gained Josh Richardson, James Johnson, and Wes Uwundu. I'm not exactly sure how to say his name. I'm not a big Wes guy. I'm going to call you Wes, but because I don't really give a shit about the Magic. And then they lost Seth Curry and DeLon Wright, which I mean, understandable. Where did DeLon Wright go? He went to Detroit, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I can't wait to talk about Detroit.
Yeah, but they were fucking stupid. But let's talk about Dallas. I think it's safe to say that Dallas really improved, right? Like even just with Josh Richardson, and Wes Iwundu is a candidate for leaves Orlando and becomes suddenly good guy, which happens pretty much every year. And then James Johnson, I don't know, he's there to do some martial arts, mixed martial arts. How did you like Dallas's offseason?
I mean, getting Richardson alone, I love. I mean, getting Josh Richardson for Seth Curry in a second-round pick is a freaking steal. And I love Seth Curry. Like, I've wanted the Pacers to sign Seth Curry for, like, the past 3 off seasons. Like, every time he's available, I want the Pacers to sign him. So, and he's like the perfect guy to play with Luka, too. And, you know, he was pretty damn good for them in the playoffs when they were giving the Clippers a run. But again, like if you can swapping him out for Richardson is a steal. And I think the Sixers are dumb. I mean, we talked about this in the past 2 podcasts about how the Sixers really need, if they put Josh Richardson on the bench and have him be their bench handler, they're going to be a much better team because not only are you putting another shooter on the floor with Simmons and Embiid that's just going to be a pure shooter like Shake Milton or something like that, you're going to push Richardson to the bench, who is going to be able to become more of himself and not just be an off-ball guy, which, again, is not who he is. Like we saw in Miami when he was there, and then we saw in the playoffs when Ben Simmons got hurt. As soon as Ben Simmons got hurt, Josh Richardson stepped up and was like really good when he had the ball in his hands. So it's pretty clear that like that's the type of role he should be playing. And for them to just trade him for a shooter, I just didn't like it. Not to say I'm not going to like Seth Curry there, but I don't know. Like I feel like they could have very easily just changed the role for Richardson and they would have been a lot better off.
So I don't think you said anything wrong there, but I definitely see the logic from the 76ers side. Just because that team was – okay, So to use an analogy here, okay, I'm really pulling out all the Colin Cowherd stops today. The 76ers last year, right, were a team that was built like your first grader's art project, right? Just a bunch of glue strewn all over the place. You know, nothing really fits together unless your first grader is like Van Gogh or something like that, right? But odds are, no offense, I don't think anyone will take offense to this. Your first grader is likely not Van Gogh, right? And you end up helping them with the art project. This seems to be what's going on with the 76ers, right? And I can't find anything that you said wrong, right? Like Seth Curry is demonstrably a worse player than Josh Richardson. That being said, I think I would rather Seth Curry be in Philadelphia than Josh Richardson, just because of the shooting, right? You actually have to respect the guys, right? We saw in 2017, right? Was it 2017 or was it 2018? I lose track of the years at this point. But Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova, okay? If they can thrive with those two and JJ Redick, I would rather have Danny Green and Seth Curry. You know, as crazy as it is to say, right? Like Danny Green, obviously, you know, has been falling off, but teams are still scared of him. Like you can't, like I know you hate to admit it, but you can't deny it. Teams are still scared of Danny Green. And I just would like to see this lineup, right? But yes, in a vacuum, absolutely rather have Josh Richardson than Curry. But I can see the logic, even if I don't 100% agree with it.
I can understand that, but at the same time, just from a value perspective, they lost the trade. You know what I mean? Like I don't understand how Seth Curry in a second equals Josh Richardson. I just don't see that.
I feel like you could have gotten PJ Tucker for Josh Richardson. Someone like that.
You probably could have, yeah.
Like
someone on that level.
I definitely agree with you that the 76ers lost the trade. But I think that Seth Curry, by being just someone who can hit the open shots, and we saw like his ball handling is better, right? Yeah. I'm finding it hard to dispute anything you're saying, which I just don't think it's that bad, right? I think it's bad. I don't think it's that bad, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's not like they're dead for this move. Like they got a good player. Like that's undeniable. Yeah. Like they got a good player, so they're fine. But like I'm just looking at their depth chart right now, and I don't know who. I mean, again, like I like Shake Milton a lot. He was one of my like more underrated players in that draft. Like I thought he was going to be a good player, like because you know, not that I'm watching a ton of Southern Methodist University basketball. Go Mustangs. But I mean, like it was just interesting to look because if you look at his last season there, they were like a good team with him on the floor, and he got hurt and missed the rest of the season, and they were completely awful. And not that college completely translates over, but it just showed like the type of talent he had, that he could literally carry like, and again, SMU is not a powerhouse or anything, but for him to just like completely carry a college basketball team to a good record, like I thought that said a lot about him. And like he reminded me a lot of George Hill. Like I thought he could be one of those combo guards that maybe he's not a starter, but like he's a really good sixth guy. Like I like him a lot, and he showed a lot last year. But at the same time, him being basically your only ball handling option off the bench, I just worry about that. And I mean, there's always some, you know, he could play with Simmons, he could play with Embiid, so he doesn't have, you know, all of the weight on his shoulders. But like taking Richardson out of there, and even taking Horford out of there, like there's just less guys you can just give the ball to now and have them do stuff. like having Danny Green and Matisse Thybulle on the floor at the same time. I mean, that's going to be worrisome. Like, there's going to be issues if you give the ball to those guys. They're not just going to be able to create a shot. And obviously, the team of last year needed changes like that. I mean, we've talked about this for a long time. They needed changes. But getting rid of Horford and Richardson and not getting a good ball handler back, I mean, they're going to come into some issues there.
I mean, those are all well taken points. It's funny. We wanted to talk about the Mavericks in this section. We ended up talking more about the Sixers. Let's go back to the Mavericks because I think the Richardson fit with Luka is phenomenal, right? Because you bump one of either you have Richardson coming off the bench, or you bump one of Finney Smith or Hardaway to the bench. In either way, okay. So I know I've been saying I have had memory issues lately. You know what I do remember? I remember both of us agreeing that Dallas's biggest need was to upgrade that Josh Jackson spot. I think it's safe to say with a 3-man wing trio of Richardson, Hardaway Jr., and Finney Smith, I think it's safe to say that that trio, you don't need to play Justin Jackson anymore. Like, you don't need that kind of guy as your 8th man anymore. And that's huge. That's huge because I think this makes Dallas so much better on both ends. So much better.
Yeah, and it's funny because we were talking about like upgrading Jackson to like Justin Holiday,
right?
And and you know, obviously they lost Seth Curry in the process, but going from that kind of guy to Josh Richardson is amazing. And really, if you really think about it, they upgraded over Justin Jackson with Wes Iwundu. So like they already improved that, and they got Josh Richardson. So. And I'm not completely convinced that James Johnson won't play a role. I mean, he might not. Like, he may just end up getting cut or traded at some point. But I don't know. Like, I could see him being, like, wanting to play Luka's bodyguard out there or something.
The Mavericks are veteran heaven. Like, if I was just a guy that was, like, failing in the league, I would just want to go to Dallas. Like,
that's what's bringing me in. It's like I could see Karloff finding something for James Johnson.
Like Monte Ellis, Darren Williams, just so many guys, right? Funny enough, the only guy that they couldn't get to buy in was Rondo. I'm not gonna talk about that situation right now. I think Dallas is a lot better, but I just given how everyone else improved, and we'll talk about them. I don't know how much of a jump they can make. I could see them like jumping from 7 to 6, but I don't really see them as a top 5 team. I think Utah. So, okay, here's the teams off the top of my head that are better this year, right? And if if he takes another leap, then this is irrelevant and they'll be a top 4 seed. But right now, obviously the 2 LA teams are better. I think Portland is better. Denver is better. I think Utah is better. That's 5 teams right there. And with Harden still there, you could make a case that they're still going to win a lot of regular season games with Harden and Westbrook there. So now we don't know what they're going to do, right? We don't know if they're going to play, right? They're getting paid $40 million. I would have to imagine they're going to play, especially Westbrook, right? I can see Westbrook demanding a trade and still playing through it. But like, I could see Dallas being a better team and still finishing 7th, as crazy as it is to say.
I can understand that. Because I think, you know, after the LA teams, it's pretty close for like the rest of the playoff teams, honestly.
Right.
Like, there's not going to be too many. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if like the 3 and 8 seeds are like 4 games apart or even less, you know, like there's a lot of close teams there. And I think I do tend to agree that like the Denver and Portland are probably better. But again, like Luka and I think Kristaps is going to miss like a month. I think I saw. Right. Obviously, he's going to come back and not be great, but they have great depth. So like, and they're going to get Dwight Powell back. So like, I wouldn't be shocked if they're better than both of those teams, honestly. And we're going to talk Denver up next. I think Denver may have taken a small step back, just with some of the depth pieces they lost, but. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if, like you said, they take a small leap or if they end up being like the third best team. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, this all depends on how much Luka improves, right? Because if Luka becomes right, if Luka continues on this LeBron James trajectory, then they will probably be a top 3 seed this year. Because LeBron's third year, if I'm not mistaken, or was it the fourth year? I think it was the fourth year was when they made the finals. But LeBron was winning playoff series in his third year still. Like he was getting to the second round when he was 20. So. And I mean, Luka, I'm not saying he's LeBron, but he's on the LeBron trajectory, right? Where he's going to be probably like, if he keeps this up for a whole career for 15 years and he wins multiple championships, he's a top 10 player of all time. Like this is how top 10 players start their careers, right? This is how Kevin Durant started his career. This is how LeBron James started his career, so on and so forth. Go down the list. Kobe, right? Kobe's the only exception actually, but Duncan, Bird, all these guys came out of the gate scoring 20 points a game. So if he takes a jump, then the rest of the NBA should be fucking scared. Even LeBron. Like the way that Luka stepped to the Clippers, right? A significantly better team. That kid has balls. And that's like something that like can't be measured by stats, but he's got it, right? Nobody knows what it is, but everybody knows it when they see it. And
that was the thing about that team. Like that series made me think. It's like if they get one more piece, they are a finals contender. And I don't know if Josh Richardson's that piece, but like when you watch Luka, and all we talked about all year with the Clippers was they have the best perimeter defense in the league because they have Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. They couldn't guard Luka. Mm-hmm. I mean, that said it all to me. And like they couldn't guard Kristaps either. Of course, he got hurt. But like, I mean, if Kristaps didn't get hurt, they could have won that series. I mean, they really could have.
Yeah, and obviously the Clippers had issues in the bubble, but still, like I would have probably taken like the way that Luka played. It's just ridiculous, and that was his first playoff series. So I'm excited to see the future. But let's move on. Let's move on to the conference finals team, the Denver Nuggets. They lost. They lost Jeremy Grant and Torrey Craig. And who else did they lose? And Mason Plumlee. But they gained JaMychal Green and they kept Paul Millsap. So. Just what did you think of Denver's offseason? Let's just start there with the basic question.
Well, so we were texting about JaMychal Green, who I have liked for years ever since he was in Memphis. I mean, that's a good get for them. That's a good get. But the fact that they lost Grant and Mason Plumlee worries me because I don't know, like is Bull their backup center now? I mean, and like Bull has showed some potential, but like he's probably not ready, even just to be a backup. And like Mason Plumlee played a very defined role there. Like as weird as it is to say, I actually think Mason Plumlee may end up being the bigger loss than Jeremy Grant because I think you could probably replace a decent amount of what Jeremy Grant did with JaMychal Green. I think Jeremy Grant's way better than JaMychal Green, but just from a role standpoint, JaMychal Green could probably fill 75% of those shoes. But Mason Plumlee was like he was like a Jokic, like very light. Like he was a very light version of Jokic where he could handle the ball a little bit and, you know, run a dribble handoff, pass to cutters. So you could keep a similar type of offense. It's obviously not going to be as concentrated on the center, but he could kind of keep the flow going that they had with Jokic on the floor. So the drop-off that you would usually see from a superstar to the backup wasn't as dramatic just because of the play style. And when you lose that guy, it's like I feel like their bench with like or just when Jokic is off the floor, I feel like they're going to be more out of sorts. And maybe they figure that out. But again, like who is the center? I mean, if Bull is the center, that is not good. So,
okay. I think JaMychal Green will probably play some center minutes. Like, right, they'll probably stagger it. I don't know if they'll start Millsap or if they'll start Green at 4. But I think whoever doesn't start at 4 will probably be the backup 5. Right. And I think Millsap transitioning to 5 might be good for his career anyway, right at this point. Try to get some of that, you know, value and I think having him off the bench as a defensive guy and creator, I think that would probably offset some of his decline. Yeah, again, another point that I can't really disagree with you on. Even I think a lot alike, but that's a good point by you that Plumlee is kind of irreplaceable for them. I don't know. We'll see how they adjust. What I'm thinking is, okay, so they're going to get Will Barton back, right? That kind of offsets the loss of Craig.
Yeah.
Craig to me was kind of like, I'm going to say like, just based on social media, he was kind of overrated. Like, I
mean, okay, I'll just say from the times that I like really went on my way to watch him in the playoffs, he was horrible. Like he was
bad.
Horrible.
He like noticed the jump from when he was playing in the first 5 games of the Utah series to when he was able to get on the bench. Right. And part of that was that Gary Harris was a phenomenally big piece for their team and he was missing, right? And part of that is that Torrey Craig just doesn't have, like, I don't understand. Okay, based on the contract that Minnesota gave him, I understand why they didn't keep Malik Beasley. But give me Malik Beasley 7 days a week and twice on Sunday over Torrey Craig. I just plain and simple. He is a lot better player. Now, yes, obviously I don't want to pay him $60 million. Nobody does. Like, I don't even understand why Minnesota did it, frankly. But I mean, Malik Beasley was a lot better than Torrey Craig, and I don't think enough people realize that. And then Jeremy Grant getting $20 million. We're going to talk about the Pistons next. Golly, I do not match that at all. Like, I don't understand, right? Jeremy Grant for $20 million, and it sounds like Denver was willing to offer him that much. Jeremy Grant apparently wanted a bigger role, which is comical. Like you okay, let's talk about Jeremy Grant now, because this is the elephant in the room. Okay, this is the $60 million elephant in the room. So Jeremy Grant decides to go to Detroit because he wants a bigger role and he wants to be the number 1 guy on a team. Now, Jeremy's probably smart in realizing that he'll be the number 1 guy on the Pistons because they have fucking nobody on their team. Okay, I mean, I have not seen anything from Jeremy Grant that exhibits that he will be able to be a number 1 guy on an offense, right? I think he was in a perfect role in Denver, right? He was, able to play off the ball. He was able to attack closeouts, right? As the 4th option. When you're the 4th option, you're going to look a lot better than when you're the 1st option on a really shitty team. And that's what's going to happen to old Jeremy in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if you want this to be a smooth transition to Detroit.
Let's just go ahead.
So Jeremy Grant was in the perfect role in Denver, which is why I think I almost like, an agent is supposed to do the best thing for their player, and usually that means getting them the most money. But if I'm Jeremy Grant's agent, whoever that person is, I'd be like, hold up. Please, let's just talk about this, okay? We can still take the money if you want. But for the love of God, you are not getting a better contract. Like, after this is over in Detroit, like, you're not making $20 million again. And because, like, well, first, let's just talk about this. Let's just talk about the big man rotation in Detroit.
It's ridiculous.
And I'm so passionately against the Detroit Pistons right now and their actions that, like, I want to start protesting. I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know if I need to drive up to Detroit on a weekend or something. But, like, I'm not even a Pistons fan. But, like, I want to start protesting because I don't understand what is happening. So let's look. And depth charts, can be changed. But, like, this is just funny to look at on ESPN, okay? So here's your starting 5. Derrick Rose, DeLon Wright, Jeremy Grant, Blake Griffin, Mason Plumlee. So you have Derrick Rose, who can't shoot, next to DeLon Wright, who I don't even know what he can do on offense at this point.
He can dribble a little bit.
Okay. So that's your starting shooting guard. He can dribble a little bit, and he's a good defender. Jeremy Grant, who is playing small forward. Blake Griffin, and then Mason Plumlee.
What's their center rotation? So that's what the people came to hear. This
is the great part. So after Mason Plumlee, you get the rookie Isaiah Stewart, who people say good things about.
Caleb said good things about him.
Okay, so the place I can't shit on them is it seems like they had a good draft. So Killian Hayes, who is bringing the French Revolution back to the NBA.
Viva la France.
So what he is avenging Vincent Poirier and Jan Mahimi and Nick Batum, all of these casualties that were very anti-France. Killian Hayes is here to fix all of that. So for that, I am partially rooting for the Pistons because I do want the French Revolution back in the NBA. And then so you get Isaiah Stewart after that, and then Sadiq Bey, who we talked about. Like Villanova guys just do good. So that's a good pick. Like I don't have to know anything about you except that you're from Villanova. So he's good. I mean, those are 3 first-rounders that are probably pretty good for them. So after Isaiah Stewart, you have the infamous Jaleel Okafor. So
poor guy. All he did was play basketball and go 105 and a 45. That's all Jaleel Okafor wanted to do.
I'm looking. I just have a headache. So Wayne Ellington is also on this team.
Somebody say some threes.
Josh Jackson.
I forgot about the Josh Jackson one.
Rodney Magruder is also on this team. We know Zanya and Musa was there after they traded Bruce Brown for some reason.
Legitimately, him or TJ Leaf is the worst player in the NBA. I can't decide which one, but I'm leaning towards Musa.
Yeah, and also a big TJ Leaf trade, which we probably won't discuss, but
huge. It's earth-shattering.
It was honestly shocking that they were able to trade him, but
like that is legitimately shocking. And all it took was attach a second round pick. TJ Leaf sucks. And I listen, I'm not going to say it to his face because he's big and he can beat me up, but I would say it near his face.
Yes, he's bad. And shout out to Oklahoma City for that. But I mean, this Detroit team, like, I don't know. I just don't know what to do. Like, Sekou Demboya, who I think he was a rookie last year, like showed a pretty good amount of promise. You know, he's probably like their 4 of the future. But when you sign Jeremy Grant and have Blake Griffin, and I just realized that this doesn't even have Dwayne Dedmon on here, who they also have.
No, they're waiving him. They're stretching him.
Okay, so that's dumb too. But I just don't like. I have no words at this point because if that somehow ends up as their starting lineup with both DeLon Wright and Jeremy Grant like out of position, and I just don't know. I don't know what to do. I just don't.
It's legitimately infuriating. This is a team that's clearly trying to tank, right? They are making absolutely zero bones about it. The guy Troy Weaver is a Presti guy. For what that's worth. Yeah, if you're going to tank, why not sign all the centers? Why not? Why not let Jeremy Grant shoot 30 times a game? Because Blake Griffin's going to get hurt at some point. Fuck it, right? Like, Detroit, without Blake Griffin last year, was legitimately one of the worst teams in recent memory, and I'm including the process 76ers. Like, they were bare bones. Sekou was literally the only thing worth a damn because Luke Kennard we both like, and we'll talk about him in a second. But Luke Kennard, at best, is probably the 7th man on a good team. Like, they had nothing. Derrick Rose was...
Well, you know who they did have? They had Christian Wood, who they just decided, oh, yeah, I'd rather have Mason Plumlee. I mean...
There's no way in hell Christian Wood wanted to stay in Detroit, though.
Yeah. That's definitely a part of it. This is obviously not just like sign whoever you want, but
well, it is give Jeremy Grant $60 million so he'll come play for us. That's for sure, right? Like who? Like under normal circumstances where Detroit's not so obviously trying to tank, and Troy Weaver, by the way, like we said, Oklahoma City guy, was Jeremy Grant's last stop before Oklahoma City? Or before Denver? Oklahoma City. I fucked up the order there. But like, so that connection obviously probably played a part. Troy Weaver's probably like, hey, Jeremy, hey, buddy, you want all the shots? You want to act like you're the first option? Come take all the shots. And Denver probably, their eyes probably got it out of their head, right? And I may have said some things about Stan Kroenke being cheap, which are definitely still true. But I mean, if they were willing to offer Jeremy Grant $20 million a year, hey, all power to him, right? And he still turned down the money. You know what can I say about the Kroenkes? I could save my bitter hatred of them for later. But just a frustrating offseason, right? And you know, the way he's drafting, I think that might make it all worth it. But Detroit's just going to be really bad for the next 3 years. And hopefully it actually turns into something this time, because last time it was just 41 wins at best and 25 wins at worst. So I'm hoping Detroit, right? Because I'm hoping the Bulls and Detroit can be good at the same time, because I like when I can actually be a Bulls fan and then when I can hate the Pistons. So, you know, that both of those things haven't been true since 1991. So let's move on to the next team, though. And we're not really fans of talking about the LA teams on this pod, right? But we have to talk about the LA teams on this one, because they had two of the better, not two of the better. The Lakers certainly did, but the Clippers, I feel like, improved for sure. So the Clippers traded for Luke Kennard and signed Serge Ibaka and re-signed Marcus Morris. And they lost Montrez, they lost Landry Shamet, they lost JaMychal Green to the aforementioned Nuggets. So I don't feel like they lost much. Is that crazy to say? Like, I feel like, right, Shamet might be a huge loss, but I'd rather have Kennard. Harrell might be a huge loss, but I'd rather have Ibaka. And then JaMychal Green, they just didn't fucking use him, right? So they didn't really lose much there. Like, do you think the Clippers... How did you like the Clippers offseason?
I mean, honestly, I loved it. Ibaka, like, that alone is massive. Like, Ibaka is so freaking good. His past 2 seasons in Toronto have been marvelous. And I don't use that word often. Marvelous. Serge Ibaka has been the past 2 years. And like, I wanted the Clippers to trade for him last year. Like, I just thought it was a great fit. Obviously, he's played with Kawhi, and they happened to win a title, by the way. So, I mean, I think that's like exactly what they needed. And like the upgrade over Harrell, like, they're not going to have to worry about guarding Jokic as much. Like, that's not as much of a problem. Obviously, Jokic is still better than Ibaka, but you don't have a 6'8" guy guarding him at this point. You know, you have a guy that has a reputation as a great defender, who has, you know, been to the finals and won. Like, the pure upgrade from Harrell to Ibaka is drastic to me. I also think upgrading from Shamet to Kennard is pretty big, just because of the ball handling aspect. Because Shamet is an off the screen shooter. Like, he can handle the ball, but like, he came into the league as a combo guard, and like, he's played with Ben Simmons and Kawhi Leonard now. Like, he's not going to handle the ball much.
Watching Shamet trying to dribble before you go on is one of the most painful things in the league. There's a lot of painful things in the league, but watching Shamet trying to dribble is terrible. I'm sorry. I don't want Shamet dribbling on my team. I just don't.
Yeah. And Kennard, on the other hand, is the guy who can dribble. And as we talked about on this pod before, the Clippers sorely lacked another guy outside of those top two that could really create for themselves, because Lou Will was not good. And we don't have to go into the reasons why. In the bubble, there could have been some off-the-court factors, obviously, that have been discussed in the media. But, you know, he was not good. Pat Bev is just not a reliable ball handler / creator. So good player. Like, I still think he's a good fit for that team, but not a reliable creator. So not to say that Luke Kennard is like some awesome, like Josh Richardson level, addition, but he is an upgrade to that bench. So from that standpoint, they got better. And this is a team that we were saying last year was like the best team on paper. It didn't work out that way, but again, I think maybe you credit some of that to the bubble. I don't know, but it was just a weird year. So who knows what's real? But they still have a freaking great roster, and it got better.
Yeah, and I again find myself agreeing with everything you're saying. I love Kennard. I think that he was woefully miscast in Detroit. I think again bumping him down to 7th man, that's going to make him a lot better, right? It's going to be huge for his career, and I just think that like you said, Ibaka, great rim protector still. Somehow this far into his career, he's still, I wouldn't call him elite anymore, right? Because I'm looking at his basketball reference page and I'm realizing that there was one year he averaged 3.7 blocks a game. Jesus Christ. That's absurd. But I mean, Ibaka, low key, again, looking at the basketball reference page, averaged 15 points a game the last 2 years. He's a guy that's not afraid to shoot it, which is something that the Clippers needed, right? They have, okay, so let's count them now. So the guys that aren't afraid to shoot the ball, just like from anywhere, right? So you got Morris, Kawhi, PG, obviously. Kennard, Lou Will is obviously not afraid to shoot it from anywhere. Will he make it all the time? Probably not. But I think that there's one move I proposed to you. I proposed it to you and Caleb, and I got feedback from both of you, and you both liked it. I just think Lou Will for George Hill, and LA throws a couple second rounders in there. I think it makes too much sense. I just think it makes too much sense because, listen, if OKC's trying to tank, why not let Lou Will take all the shots, right? And George Hill just fits the team perfectly. It's a capable backup defender. You aren't losing any defense when you're probably gaining defense when Patrick Beverley sits down. I don't know. The team, to me, the Clippers are still flawed, right? And let's move on to the actual best team on paper, which is the Los Angeles Lakers. They gained Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews, Markieff. They re-signed Markieff Morris, and they signed one of my favorite players of all time, Marc Gasol. They lost Danny Green, Rondo, Avery Bradley, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee. I would say of all those guys they lost, they upgraded from every single one of those spots. I mean, Harrell, I don't understand the fit 1,000%, but I think Wes Matthews is an upgrade over Danny Green. I think, just the team makes more sense to me this year.
Yeah, and one of the things we don't have, because this list we're working off of is, I tried to just do free agency, so they already made the Dennis Schroeder trade.
Mm-hmm.
So they got that upgrade there over Rondo. So, they started the offseason with the Schroeder trade, which we both liked, and then you build on top of that. And the thing about Gasol is he was really bad this past year. His defense is probably still okay, but he was shooting wide open threes and just missing. I can't recall more than a handful of wide open top of the key threes that he just bricked. And those were shots where even just the year before he was making. The year they won the finals, he was clearly not the same player he was in Memphis for all those years, but he was still viable. He was worse than Serge Ibaka, but he was still viable. And last year, he was just bad. I think you can make arguments that Chris Boucher was better than him a lot of times. Who re-signed in Toronto, by the way. Very happy to say that, because we both like him, as the Toronto nerds we are.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Getting Harrell is good. I still think it's weird. I don't know. Of all things to do, it's It's just kind of weird how the past 2 seasons they've just kind of hammered down on center. It's like Dwight Howard was like one of their best players last year, and now they get rid of him and they sign another center. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it worked for them this past year, but it's just odd to me. And then, Wesley Matthews, obviously a good move. KCP was re-signed as well. So, the depth, we worried about the depth this past year, and the depth is better now. They're still weak on the wing, but it's not horrible. So I think they're fine, and they probably still are the best team on paper. But, overall a good offseason for sure.
Yeah, the Schroeder-Harrell pick and roll is going to be just fearsome.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's going to be probably unstoppable. Yeah, the Lakers to me kind of shored up all their holes, like with what you said. If they lost all three of Danny Green, Avery Bradley, and KCP, I would have been considerably more worried.
Yeah.
But I think Schroeder can give you, I mean, he's obviously way better on offense than Bradley or Rondo. I mean, Rondo in the playoffs, I'd probably rather have than Schroeder. But, I mean, still, Schroeder's significantly better than both of them. I don't know about Wes Matthews at this point. We'll have to wait to see, right? I don't know if that was Bud incompetence or if it was Wes Matthews falling off. Even as much as I don't like Bud, I would probably defer to him in this scenario, but we'll have to see it in Los Angeles, right? Because he's obviously going to start for them. I don't know. I think Marc Gasol, I think he's just going to bang. And I think that's what they need. They just need a banger, right? Jokic is kind of funny because now all the teams that are like wanting to contend need to get centers now. It's just really funny to me, right? Because now, like we were hearing for years, oh, center doesn't matter. And now like all the teams are like having to shore up on center. Right. So that was funny to me, right? Like I think he'll fit well in Los Angeles because his role will be significantly reduced. So I think the Lakers had a great offseason. And hold on, I'm going to pull up the Dylan Hughes quote real quick because you said something about repeat champions that was interesting to me. We'll have to scroll back a little while, but I think you said you hate them. I think you said you just hate repeat champions. I think they're stupid, I think might have been the exact phrasing.
Yeah, they are stupid. Like, what sport besides the NBA does this happen? I mean, seriously. Like, the NFL, if you take the Patriots dynasty out of it, you just rarely see a team in the Super Bowl or in the championship game like as often as the NBA. It's like you build a team and it's like you're guaranteed damn near to have like 3 finals appearances. Like, I don't like that.
Well, the West, I mean, look, with Luka's certain rise to dominance, I think we won't have to worry about the Lakers for much longer. But let's move on to the next team, the Miami Heat. They kind of had a more low-key offseason, but they signed Mo Harkless and the aforementioned Bradley, and then they re-signed Dragic and Myers Leonard team-friendly deals. So we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on the Heat, but I think they kind of got a little worse just by not keeping Crowder.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was let's just talk about Crowder real quick because Crowder is on the next team. So we'll use that to transition. But I think that the Heat are going to be significantly worse this year just because, like, Harkless is good. But I think for the Heat specifically, they need Crowder more than they need Harkless.
Yeah, see, the problem, and again, I don't know if even if they re-signed Crowder, if this was going to be able to happen, but Crowder's shooting was, I don't want to say single-handedly, but it was definitely one of like the 5 biggest factors of them getting to the finals. And again, that was rather uncharacteristic for him to shoot like that. So even if they did re-sign him, I'm not convinced that he would have been able to continue that. But there is a massive hole at the 4 now. And in the regular season, they had that problem. Like, they were playing Olynyk. They were playing, Leonard there at times. They were playing Iguodala after they got him. Like, they couldn't really figure it out. And then Jay Crowder was acquired, and then they just kind of started. It just worked. now they're back to the same problem. Like, if Maurice Harkless is the Jay Crowder of this year, that's a really bad sign for them. Like, if that's their best option, and I don't think it will be, just knowing Spo, he's probably going to change that. Who's at the 4 a lot. It's going to be a lot of matchup-based stuff. But, I mean, looking at this roster, like, it worries me. I don't know. Unless you want to go tiny and stick Avery Bradley in there and like push Jimmy to the 4, it's like I don't know another option, because if you put Kelly Olynyk or Myers Leonard out there, you're going to run into some major problems.
Yeah, and the Heat finals appearance kind of felt fluky already. And I looked up, I went to the Basketball Reference playoff leaders, right? Jay Crowder shot the most threes in the playoff, and he made the third most. Jay Crowder was 55 for 161. He shot a lot of them. And Harkless, one thing we know about Harkless is that he is trigger shy. He is not as, like, even I would say Crowder's a better shooter only because he shoots. If Harkless actually shot, he might be a good shooter, but we don't know, because Harkless, I don't think, has ever gone above 3 attempts a game. So I think that that's going to be an interesting fit. The defense, the wing defense should be better, and Bradley should shore up their point guard defense. But in a conference with Giannis, Crowder was essential in that Bucks series. Like, they don't make the finals without Crowder. That's 100% for sure. But again, in the interest of time spent, let's move on to the next team, the Phoenix Suns, who signed Jay Crowder. They also signed Etuan Moore and re-signed Dario Saric. They lost Aaron Baines, and obviously they traded for Chris Paul. Are the Suns going to be one of the running cook favorites this upcoming season?
Dude, I'm looking at this roster right now. So here's your projected starting 5 right now: Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton.
I love it.
I mean, that's beautiful. And again, like, let's just, to go back on the Heat discussion, let's say Jay Crowder has a tough year. He's shooting 31% from 3. The defense is still good, but you want a little bit more floor spacing. You just slide Cam Johnson in, and all that floor spacing comes back. You want to go small and maybe try Mikal at the 4. Etuan Moore, who I just found out Etuan Moore was signed today. I'm like, wow. Like, Etuan Moore, obviously there's going to be some Purdue bias there, but Etuan Moore is from my Purdue, like, childhood team, so I'll always be attached to him. And, Robbie Hummel didn't work out, so he's the last little hope I have left. He has been a very reliable bench shooter for his whole career, and I think he's going to continue to do that here. And, re-signing Saric was good. Like, I don't love Saric, but he's probably replacement level, honestly. But, like, he's a good backup for maybe spot starter here and there.
He played a lot of 5 in the bubble, and I think that's what he's going to do. He's going to be the backup 5 behind Ayton, and I think they're going to let Jalen Smith develop for a year. But I think that what I've been told about Jalen Smith, and just basically everything that, I mean, we ascertain that James Jones values. He values depth, and this team is deep. This team has solid depth.
And Saric, when he was in Minnesota, he actually played some he was kind of their backup 5 for a while after they traded Jang. It wasn't for long, but he was their backup 5, and he actually did pretty good. Like, he's very strong defensively. He's not a good perimeter defender because he's
slow.
He's slow, but he's definitely one of those guys that's just strong, where you're better off having him in that kind of position. So I don't hate that idea at all if they do go there. I wouldn't be shocked if Jalen Smith is kind of raw out of the gate. I do like Jalen Smith, so I hope he can find a role. But again, if they have to play Saric, I think they're fine.
And Javon Carter really showed out. I don't think we're going to see a repeat performance from Cam Payne, but God bless him if he does. I mean, Javon Carter, to me, that was kind of like, I love that re-signing for them, right? I love the way he plays. Like, just the way he plays defense, he automatically earned a spot on my, want to have him on my team guys list. But I mean, Booker should take a step forward. Chris Paul should stabilize the team. I don't see any reason why this team should miss the playoffs. Unless someone gets a massive injury, which Chris Paul had good injury luck last year. I don't know if he'll have the same luck next year, but I don't see any reason why the Suns should make the playoffs. Like, they're deep. And I think depth in this season where it's going really fast, I think that's going to benefit them. I think it's going to benefit them. I really do.
Yeah, and DeAndre Ayton should theoretically take a decent leap as well, playing with Chris Paul. So, and again, like playing with Chris Paul, Devin Booker is definitely going to be in like a very comfortable role. I think he's going to feel pretty good in that role, because as we saw last year, him playing next to Rubio, he was a lot more comfortable because he didn't have to bear that load. Because man, when he didn't have a point guard, he made a lot of mistakes because he just is not that natural passer. And when he's forced into that role, it's just not good. And he took a lot of bad shots. We've seen this similar things with Donovan Mitchell, but Donovan Mitchell has, I think, made mass improvements with his passing vision. But, having Chris Paul, he's not going to have to worry about that. He can worry more about scoring and getting to that nice elbow jumper that he likes. So I think, the two cornerstones of this future of the franchise are going to get – they should be a lot better this year. So that alone is going to definitely propel the Suns into hopefully a nice little playoff spot.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. But the West is always tough. I mean, there is the play-in tournament though, so
that's true. Either way, they have that safety net.
Right. They're a top 10 team in the West for sure. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. The next team that you have on your list is the Portland Trailblazers. They re-signed Rodney Hood. They signed Derek Jones Jr. They traded for Enes Kanter. They lost Hassan Whiteside and Mario Hezonja. I would argue two of the best guys to lose in the NBA.
Oh, yeah. That's addition by subtraction right there.
Both of them. And that's having two additions by subtraction. That's like four right there. The math doesn't add up necessarily, but it adds up in NBA sense. They obviously traded for Robert Covington. This team is wing rich now after not having any wings.
Yeah, just like that. Happened real quick.
And Rodney Hood re-signing. The second year is fully non-guaranteed. So if the Rodney Hood experiment, if he doesn't bounce back, they can just cut bait, right? But Rodney Hood was really good for them when he did play for Portland. And I mean, we talked about them earlier. I said they could finish in the top three, but how do you like Portland into the coming season?
Yeah, I mean, like Portland, I think always gets, like, to me at least, they get a Damian Lillard bump because he always gets them, 3 to 4 wins at least more than they should. And now he's got a pretty damn good supporting cast. Like, I'm interested to see if they end up rolling with Zach Collins at the 4 again. I don't want to say it didn't work because, he was hurt and Nurkic was hurt at different times. So, like, we never really got a great amount of time, a great sample size to see just how that would work. But just on paper, Zach Collins is a 5. And I think he can play the 4, but I'm not sure that's the best way to utilize him. And, you want to talk options at the 4, like, you could go Melo. I mean, Melo was pretty good last year, like certainly better than he was in his prior few stops. Who knows if that holds up. Rodney Hood, you could you could just slide Covington up and put a smaller guy at the 3. Derek Jones Jr., maybe, I don't know. He's an athlete. And if you just want a guy on the floor that's going to defend his ass off and like not hold the ball, that's your guy. So,
right.
There's a lot they could do. And Terry Stotts is a really good coach. So he's going to figure the lineup that works out. But yeah. And also Harry Giles, the addition there. I'm kind of sad that he didn't go to Denver because like that would have been he could have easily stepped into that role as backup center. Like with Portland now, he's kind of buried behind Nurkic and Kanter. I'm not sure he's going to play as much as I would like to see, but and I guess Giles would still be considered a flyer at this point. But like the talent's there. We've seen it. He was one of the best players coming into college. He had so many freaking knee injuries. He just came out and he could have easily been like a number 1 overall pick if he wasn't hurt. Like that's how people talked about him. And he hasn't really had injury problems in the NBA, but he hasn't had a ton of opportunity either. And playing with the Kings, for God's sakes, give the guy a chance. So I kind of hope he gets some sort of a role there, but at this point it's not looking good. But if they can figure that 5 out, whether it is Collins or someone else, they've got a hell of a starting 5, and they've got way more depth than they did last year.
And that's one thing I'll touch on real quick is like you could go a lot of different ways, right? Covington's experience last year, I would be comfortable playing him at center for small stretches, putting Melo at the 4 and Rodney Hood at the 3 and just going all stretch offense, right? Like that offense would be insanely stretchy. Like the defense would probably give it up on the other end, but I would trust Covington as a rim protector. I would probably start. So this is what I would probably start. Okay. Lillard and CJ, obviously. Nurkic, obviously. I'd probably start Rodney Hood at 3 and Covington at 4. I think Covington's better off as a 4 at this point anyway. So that makes that more malleable. And then just Rodney Hood's ball handling to me. I miss Rodney Hood, man. He's such a fun player to watch. And when he's good, he's good. And when he's bad, he sucks. But Rodney Hood was good in Portland. So I want to see that. I want to see that experiment. Let's move on to the team we want to laugh at last before I throw in a couple of my honorable mentions here. The Kings. Good God, the fucking Kings. I hate them. I hate them. They signed, the only thing good they did this offseason was sign De'Aaron Fox to that ginormous contract. But golly, man. Bazemore, Bogdan, Harry Giles was what they lost. We talked about Bogdan, obviously, but the whole Bogdan situation in Milwaukee is a fucking disgrace. And I feel like the Kings are partly to blame. So let me give some background real quick, because that's a hefty claim, I know. But there's an article on Deadspin a while ago that pointed out that the NBA, this is back in 2014, just to give the listeners context that they need. So the NBA released 30 different memos to 30 GMs, right? Just to see who was leaking stuff to Woj. They found out that Joe Dumars was the leak. Do you want to know where Joe Dumars works now, Dylan Hughes? You want to guess?
Tell me.
He works
Hold
for
it on me.
The Sacramento Kings. And let's not act like this guy was, fucking Wizard GM when he was a GM last. They fucking sucked. He took over in 2000. Okay, he made some pretty good moves, right? We talked pretty ad nauseum last week about the whole second pick in the draft situation, right? Like, God, man, their draft sucked after 2004. They gave a combined $100 million to fucking Charlie Villanueva and Ben Gordon. Those two guys, it's just terrible contracts. And then the icing on the shit cake, just this whole Bogdanovich situation where it was obvious that someone leaked this to Woj way too early. The NBA got mad about them for tampering, right? Which is bullshit based on what we saw last year, but still. So someone stepped up and said something about it. And so then, Bogdanovich, whatever, goes to the Hawks, whatever. They signed today. We're recording this on Wednesday. I'm probably going to put this out on Friday. They signed fucking Hassan Whiteside today. Just why? Why? You have a fun young team. Why have a guy that all he wants to do is put up stats? That's literally all Hassan Whiteside is looking to do. He doesn't play defense. He's just looking to get blocks. He doesn't box out. He's just looking to get rebounds. He doesn't do anything productive on offense. He's just looking to score the points, right? So why do you sign this guy when you have De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield, right? Two guys you can ostensibly still build around. It just boggles the mind, right? Why not? You didn't want Buddy Hield anyway. Why not just keep Bogdan and trade for Al Horford? right? It just didn't make sense. Nothing this fucking team does make sense, and it's just fucking infuriating. God.
Well, see, here's the problem, okay? So last year, they benched Buddy because Bogdan is a better fit with De'Aaron Fox. That's where they convince themselves of that. They basically tell the whole world, hey, world, we're going to trade Buddy Hield as soon as we can. So what do? They say, okay, so first of all, let's go back to how they even get Bogdan Bogdanovic, okay? So Bogdan was like a foreign player for a while that everyone was keeping tabs on. Like he was going to be – we knew he was coming to the NBA at some point. He was going to be real good. He had the Phoenix Suns held his rights for years. And the Phoenix Suns, the team that we just talked up, they said, hey, you know who we really should trade the rights to Bogdan Bogdanovic for? Marquise fucking Chris. We don't only want Dragan Bender in this draft. We also want Marquise Chris. Those are our two cornerstones right there. That's who we really need. We need to draft two players within 5 picks that play the same position. And to do so, we're going to trade the rights to one of the best foreign players in the world. So the Kings, for once, come out on top. For once, they come out on top of a trade. I mean, just shocking. Like, someone write a freaking book about this because the Kings, I mean, every blind squirrel gets a nut. But the fucking blind squirrel lost its nut, okay? They had this dude for 4 years. They convinced themselves within the past year that this is basically their second best player for the future, and they just let him walk. And again, the Bucks thing is tough because they were going to trade him for like some pieces. Like Dante DiVincenzo is a piece. DJ Wilson could maybe be a backup for, I don't know. They were getting something out of it. They get nothing out of this. Now you have Buddy Hield, who probably still hates it there. You have Hassan Whiteside as your starting center, I guess. It's like, and this is all after a week ago. I'm so happy for them for drafting Tyrese Halliburton because he's like the one guy in the draft I even know. And I'm like, oh, this is a good player. Like, I'm happy they got him. And they just do all this shit within a week after me for once giving them praise. So congratulations, Kings, for turning this podcast into just a Kings hate session. And I think every podcast we record for the rest of time, we're going to have some Kings hate because it'll never be enough.
So, okay, real quick. So, so obviously the Kings got Bogdan Bogdanovic in that trade. They also got an extra first-round pick, right? They got 13. Do you remember who they picked at 13? Do you remember who the Kings picked?
Please tell me.
It was Georgios Papagiannis. You remember that guy?
And they still won the trade. That's how bad of a trade it was.
I mean, just go through the Kings' recent history, right? Through every GM, right? Just go look at the fucking 76ers trade where they traded the future lightly protected first round pick that they got lucky that they actually won some games the year it was due. But man, the Kings fucking suck. And that's just all there is to it. I want to shout out the Bucks. They bounced back after losing Bogdanovic. They was signing Augustine and Craig and Bryn Forbes. I really liked all those moves for them. It sucks that they're still trying to avoid the luxury tax, but I mean, still, they tried. I'd give them a C for the offseason just because they tried, and it wasn't really entirely their fault. But I think that's all I really wanted to shout out. I think we touched on a lot. We did a lot in this episode, and it was great, as always. Dylan, I want to thank you again for joining me.
Thank you. It felt good to get some of that hate off the chest, and I didn't expect to hate the Kings more than the Pistons because I was prepared to go off on the Pistons, and I did. But the Kings' rage is just constantly brewing, and it really just poured out there at the end.
The Kings are the Kings. Let's just make that abundantly clear. The Kings are the Kings. They can never do anything right. They're constant fuck ups. They're just a disgrace to the sport. But like I said, this is probably going to come out on Friday the 27th. We are going to take next week off because, frankly, we deserve it, and we're not going to give away the companies we're working for because we're not going to give them free publicity. But we're both working in industries that make this time incredibly busy for us. We will be back the week after that with. We're going to copy. I'm claiming this on the back end, and we'll claim this at the front end of the other podcast. We're kind of copying Dunked On, but they're so good at their jobs. We're not gonna equal them probably, but we're gonna get close. We're gonna do conference previews each of the 2 weeks before the season. Then we'll go from there. We don't have a plan after that yet, but we have a plan, which is usually further than we go. Lynn Sanity, go check that out. Caleb and Zach and Bryce were on another episode, and that trio is dynamite. Battleground, I'm not sure what their status is. Bryce is also working at a place that's conducive to busy times, especially on Black Friday. So we don't know what that situation is, but Triple Option Pass, I don't know if they're coming back this week. I'm not entirely sure. Again, I've been busy this week. Can't keep up with all of it. Circle City Cinema, they're always great. They did an episode on the Zodiac, and they also broke down who they thought the Zodiac killer was. So I didn't listen that far. I'm gonna be honest. I'm the producer, but I don't always do a good job of listening to my own stuff. But Dylan, this was such a fun pod, man. Appreciate you joining me, man. This is a great time.
It always is, buddy. It always is.